Right, hi everybody joining me on YouTube and on TikTok. Hello everybody, how are you today? If you caught my live stream the other day, I was talking about bots. Was talking about a massive bot army that had been exposed by some Australian smarty pants researchers. The article was by Declassified Australia, and you might remember they'd exposed a massive anti-Russian bot army. They examined 5 million tweets and 1.8 million accounts. It was huge. Well, in response to that, the New York Times have now written another article. This is from just 2 days ago, and the New York Times are not talking about these bots though. They're talking about a Russian bot army that they say have been resurrected to attack the US midterms, which are going on as we speak right now. They're actually voting today. They have been mailing in ballots for a while, and apparently it's going to take a while for them to count these ballots in America. They can count 100 million votes in a commercial break on American Idol, but that's an aside. Anyway, this article from the New York Times. This headline: Russia reactivates its trolls and bots ahead of Tuesday's midterms. Researchers have identified a series of Russian information operations to influence American elections and perhaps erode support for Ukraine. So let's read on, shall we, and find out how big these bots are. This army of bots are that are attacking the midterms, apparently. What did they say? To influence the American elections. So this is from 2 days ago. It says this: the user on Gab, who identifies as Norva Burka, resurfaced in August after a year-long silence on the social media platform, reposting a handful of messages with sharply conservative political themes before writing a stream of original vitriol. I've never been on Gab, but from what I understand, it's a pretty much right-wing, sharply conservative political platform. So fit right in there, this Norva Burka will. Anyway, goes on to say, the post merely denigrated President Biden and other prominent Democrats, sometimes obscenely. They also lamented the use of taxpayer dollars to support Ukraine in its war against invading Russian forces, depicting Ukraine's president as a caricature straight out of Russian propaganda. So this is sort of the other side of the coin, I suppose you would say, you would say, to what I reported on the other day with this massive pro Ukraine bot army that's been unleashed on the public in America. We don't know who's behind it, but we know that it's a bot army that is very pro the war in Ukraine and pro-Ukraine and very anti-Russian. So this is sort of like the opposite side of that. So it'd be interesting to see how big this operation is. Browning. The post, I've read that already. The fusion of political concerns was no coincidence, this article says. The account was previously linked to the same secretive Russian agency that interfered in the 2016 presidential election and again in 2020. It's called the Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg, according to the cybersecurity group Recorded Future. So what they're saying is these bots that they've been resurrected for these midterms have come from the Internet Research Agency. Now, if you follow what I did and many other people in independent media with regards to the 2016 election and the whole Russiagate scenario and the Mueller investigation after that, you will know certain things are true, and you'll know that certain things were exaggerated by the media. And coinciding with the release of the DNC emails by WikiLeaks and the alleged hack that came from that, it didn't, just in case you're wondering, it was a leak. I'm sure the DNC was hacked, but that's an aside. But it all coincided with that. So Americans sort of have this feeling that the Russians hacked the election in 2016. Do you remember? They'd said it for 4 years, and Donald Trump benefited from that, and he was Putin's buddy. So they're saying that the Internet Research Agency that were behind those that interference on the US election in 2016 has been resurrected again for these midterms coming up. Okay, now as I said then, it's important to dictate to understand here what is true and what is fact and what is hyperbole, because there was a lot of hyperbole around that time with regards to the so-called hack on the 2016 election. You may remember Bill Maher saying 17 agencies agree that the Russians were behind the hack, you know, and it was sort of conflated with the election. It wasn't. 17 agencies had said 17 agencies didn't say anything actually. It was hand-picked analysts from 3 or 4 agencies by Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, who said with moderate confidence these came from Russia and it was directed by Putin. And this was not them hacking the vote count or anything like that. And that's, don't take my word for that, by the way. And you need to understand that this is actually what the Mueller investigation found, for those who say the Mueller investigation. Listen to this.
Good afternoon.
So this is Rod Rosenstein, who was Deputy Attorney General, and this is from 2018, and this is after the report of the Mueller report came out, which sort of indicted 12 Russians for hacking. It's important here to listen to what Rod Rosenstein said at that press conference to know exactly what went down with the so-called Russian interference in the 2016 election. Listen to this.
The indictment charges 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for committing federal crimes while seeking to interfere in the United States political system, including the 2016 presidential election. The defendants allegedly conducted what they called information warfare against the United States, with the stated goal of spreading distrust towards the candidates and the political system in general. Now, there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election. Thank you very much.
So you can hear there was no allegation in that indictment that the charge came, it changed the outcome of the 2016 election at all. This investigation into Russian interference in the election that found these 13 Russian people guilty. And by the way, none of those people have ever seen the inside of a court. Just as I said at the time, they never would. They didn't really find anything there, but it was a big hullabaloo, and it was made up to be much larger a thing in the media and conflated as well with the DNC emails. So that's important to know that there was, although there were no doubt interference by entities in Russia that tried to either profit from the 2016 election through internet marketing schemes or influence it in some way. There's no allegation, by the way, at all that the Russian state was behind any of these bots. They couldn't prove that either. So it's important to understand that before we carry on with this article. All right. So it is part of what the group and other researchers have identified as a new, though more narrowly targeted, Russian effort ahead of Tuesday's midterm election. So what the New York Times here is alleging is that these bots have been resurrected for the midterm elections, but it won't be as big as a campaign as in 2016. It's more narrowly targeted. Okay? The goal, as before, is to stoke anger among conservative voters and to undermine trust in the American electoral system. This time, it also appears intended to undermine the Biden administration's extensive military assistance to Ukraine. I'm just wondering actually whether I'm still live on YouTube, because I can't see any chat going. Just bear me a second. Trust in the American electoral. Okay, I am. That's all right. For some reason, I thought that it had all gone to pot then. Sorry about that. So let's carry on with this article. The goal, as before, is to stoke anger among conservative voters and to undermine trust in the American electoral system. This time, it also appears intended to undermine the Biden administration's extensive military assistance to Ukraine. So this definitely is sort of like the opposite side of the coin to that massive anti-Russian bot army that was exposed by the Australian researchers. Okay. Quote, "It is clear that they are trying to get them to cut off aid and money to Ukraine," said Alex Plitzas, a former army soldier and Pentagon information operations official, now with Providence Consulting Group, a business technology company. Well, look at that. A former army soldier and Pentagon information operations official now works in the private sector. It's amazing how that keeps happening, that revolving door, isn't it? You'll probably go back into a job in the army and then back out. It happens over here as well in the UK. The campaign, using accounts that pose as enraged Americans like Norva Burka, have added fuel to the most divisive political and cultural issues in the country today. Have you noticed something? I'm quite a few paragraphs in to this so far, but there's no real hard-hitting punch as to how many. Do you remember the other article I read to you? Look how it says a team of researchers at that University of Adelaide was found that as many as 80% of the tweets about the 2022 Russia-Ukraine invasion in the early weeks were part of a covert propaganda campaign originated from automated fake bots. So 80% of those tweets, massive number. And then it says 5 million tweets it studied. 90.2% of those tweets were pro-Ukraine. Fewer than 7% of the accounts being... That's all in the first two paragraphs. This is going on a bit, isn't it, this article? You know? There's a lot of padding here, seemingly. I'll continue with it anyway. For anybody, by the way, on YouTube complaining about the microphone, I don't know how to sort it out. I've had massive problems with my computer. If it's a little bit tinny, you'll just have to bear with it. Stop bitching, stop complaining. If you don't like it, you can always go and watch somebody else. Seriously. I can't do anything about it. I've tried my best to do it, and I will get some help when I can. But there's nothing I can do about it. Alright, stop bitching, stop whining, listen to what I say, or bugger off. I really don't care. Okay? Thanks. So this article, it says it has specifically targeted Democratic candidates in the most contested races, including the Senate seat up for grabs in Ohio, Arizona and Pennsylvania, calculating that a Republican majority in the Senate and the House of Representatives could help the Russian war effort. Again, it's not much about with these bots and what they're doing, is it? There's not much there. I mean, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we're about 10 paragraphs in already. Not much there, is there, so far? The campaigns show not only how vulnerable the American political system remains to foreign manipulation, but also how purveyors of disinformation have evolved and adapted to efforts by the major social media platforms to remove or play down false or deceptive content. Well, how many tweets have they checked? What percentage of the tweets were anti-Biden? How many accounts were involved? Over what platforms? You know, none of these statistics are on the page so far, are they? And there seems to be a lot of allegations here from the New York Times of what these bots are doing, but there's nothing really substantive as to behind, you know, any proof and any statistics. It's just my thoughts so far. Last month, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who have got the Epstein tapes, by the way, the FBI and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency issued an alert warning of the threat disinformation spread by, quote, dark web media channels, online journals, messaging applications, spoofed websites, emails, text messages, and fake online personas. The disinformation could include claims that voting data or results had been hacked and or compromised. So what they're saying here is, yes, some of these people, they could start up a campaign. So the FBI, what, a few weeks ago did it say? They issued an alert warning. When did they last month they issued it. So the FBI issued an alert warning that this might happen. That people might stir up stuff. From these Russian bots, these Russian trolls might stir up things, and they might include claims that voting data or results from the election had been hacked or compromised. I mean, the Democrats would never do anything like that, would they? You know, I know it's all very much this is to spread it amongst conservative voters, that the conservatives might complain this, but the Democrats would never allege that an election was, you know, hacked or anything like that. Oh wait, what's this?
That it is incorrect to say the 2020 election was stolen. What about the 2016 election?
Look, I'm not gonna
Go back into history.
It was a stolen election.
It was stolen.
stolen. He's an illegitimate president. He's an illegitimate president.
You know, pretending to be president.
Why do you think the president is going to such great lengths to essentially prove that he beat you?
Because he didn't.
1/3 of Clinton supporters say Trump election is not legitimate.
I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win.
You are absolutely right.
You can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
The 2016 election was stolen. Got a nicer way to say that?
Say Russia hacked the election.
Russia hacked our election.
Russia hacked our elections.
A little louder, please.
Russia hacked our election. That was a 9/11 scale event.
This was a kind of cyber 9/11. American
cyber
institutions.
9/11.
Yes.
Russia hacked our election.
Russia, of course, hacked our election here.
Half of Clinton's voters believe the conspiracy theory that Russia hacked election day votes.
We know that they were into voting rolls, actual interference with the elections themselves. We know it happened.
Despite no credible evidence, 67% of Democrats believe Russia tampered with vote tallies.
Hacking the U.S. election.
Hacking the U.S. election.
Russia hacked our election. The Russians hacked our election.
Russia hacked our election.
Russia hacked our election.
Russian hacking of our election.
Hacking of our election.
Russia hacked our elections.
Russia hacked our elections.
Stolen election.
Russia hacked our election.
Russia hacked our election.
Universal assessment that Russia hacked our election in 2016.
Foreign governments hacked our elections.
Most young Americans consider Donald Trump an illegitimate president. An illegitimate president.
He's an illegitimate president.
Why is he illegitimate? He just won an election.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind. That's it.
I absolutely agree.
Experts urge Clinton camp to challenge election results.
We will see how illegitimate his victory actually was. He's an illegitimate president.
Russia hacked our election.
Russians hacking our election.
Hacked our election.
Russia hacking our election.
I don't see the president-elect as a legitimate president.
Trump is an illegitimate president who stole the election.
He is not a president.
He's illegitimate. And my big
I'm only halfway through this video from Matt Orfler. And for those on TikTok, you can't see this video, but I mean, all of the people are there saying this on video. All of these people from media, from the government officials, intelligence officials, politicians, people who are writing in the New York Times, all of these people over and over and over are saying Russia hacked our election. When I have just shown you Rod Rosenstein, the deputy AG, after the Mueller report was published, saying, yeah, there's no vote count changed, there's no allegations at all. But there was a lot of fluff, but when you came down to it, actually there was nothing there. I'm going to play the rest of this brilliant video by Matt Orfler. It just shows how, you know, the news swings one way or the other depending on which way the wind's blowing, and, you know, this is brainwashing, is what it is. It's brainwashing of a population to believe Russia hacked the 2016 election and Donald Trump was illegitimate. It's okay when the Democrats do it, isn't it?
biggest fear fear is that he's going to do it again with the help of Vlad, his best pal. It's terrifying.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate?
Hillary Clinton voters called to overturn election results.
More than 4 million people have already signed a petition on change.org, calling for the electors of the Electoral College to, quote, ignore their states' votes and cast their ballots for Secretary Clinton.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016.
We are the victims of a bloodless coup.
He didn't win the general election.
Yo, Electoral College, make Hillary Clinton president, period.
Donald Trump is an illegitimate president.
Illegitimate president.
Dems don't accept Trump as a legitimate president.
This wasn't on the level.
This election was not on the level.
I don't think he's a legitimate president.
Our election wasn't legit!
He got his victory from cheating.
Yes, Trump cheated.
Trump cheated the 2016 election.
He's an illegitimate president.
No validity, no credibility.
And because of that,
anger at what some see as an illegitimate president.
It will not be a peaceful change of power.
a number of incidents turned violent. Protesters hurled trash cans, flash bombs, and objects at police.
Several officers injured. Protesters threw rocks and smashed windows, leading to more confrontations, injuries, and arrests.
The chaotic scene just blocks outside the secure area of the inauguration.
If denying election results is extreme now,
yeah.
Why was
so
it
let's be really clear. That comparison that you made is just ridiculous.
Isn't that a brilliant video? Isn't that a fantastic video by Matt Orfler? And just shows how, you know, they're saying now, look at this Russians, and even though they admit that they never changed anything in 2016, the Democrats and the Democratic media all were saying that it was illegitimate and Russia hacked the election over and over and over again. I mean, it's mind control is what it is. You say the same thing over and over again, you're trying to manipulate the minds of the masses. So it's interesting, isn't it, that now they're saying that the Russian trolls, in this article, they're saying that the Russian trolls are, or the FBI said that the Russian trolls would try and sow disinformation out there that could include claims that voting data or results had been hacked and compromised. I mean, where would they get that idea from after seeing that video? They're only doing what the Hillary Clinton and the entire Democratic establishment did for 4 years after they lost to Donald Trump. Isn't that correct? Anyway, I just wanted to show you that, and just to show, you know, and obviously the New York Times, they were on board with Russiagate. They were on board with that investigation. It was a big fat dud. I'll continue with this article. So far, it's not blowing my skirt up. It really isn't. I don't know whether you've noticed. But the agencies urge people not to like, discuss, or share posts online from unknown or distrustful sources. Distrustful services. Well, the sources. That's MSNBC, CNN, and Fox, and a lot of them out the window straight away, because they're not to be trusted. You just saw them all saying over and over there that they, well, not Fox in that instance, but MSNBC, CNN. Rachel Maddow, the one program on Russia that she said, I mean, she said Russia about 1 million times in one program. Okay, it wasn't that much, but you should go and check that video out. So, yeah, don't share posts with distrustful sources, they said. And they said all this a month ago, and then these bots start up. So, you know, they knew it was coming. They did not identify specific efforts, so they were very vague. They were very vague with this warning, but social media platforms and researchers who track this information have recently uncovered a variety of campaigns by Russia, China, and Iran. So what are these researchers who track disinformation? Who are these people? So they are Recorded Future, apparently, and two other social media research companies, Graphica, which I know is full of ex-spooks and whatever, and is sort of a cutout for intelligence agencies in America, and Mandiant found a number of Russian campaigns that have turned to Gab, Parler, Getter, and other newer platforms that pride themselves on creating unmoderated spaces in the name of free speech. Okay, so they're spreading their stuff. They say they're going to spread their stuff on Parler and what have you, and Gab. Isn't they're all right wingers on there, aren't they? There's no Democrats on those Gab, Parler and Getter. Mind you, Elon's took over Twitter now, so they might all flock there. Anyway, although I think they're going to Mastodon. I don't know. Can't keep up with these liberals. Anyway, these are much smaller campaigns than those in the 2016 election, where inauthentic accounts reached millions of voters across the political spectrum on Facebook and other major platforms. The efforts are no less pernicious, though, in reaching impressionable users who can help accomplish Russian objectives, researchers said. We've got to get to these researchers in a bit, but what they're saying here and what they're admitting in this article is the campaigns that these Russian bots have been resurrected for, it's much smaller than it was in the 2016 election. So how big was it in the 2016 election? Remember, Rod Rosenstein there, the Deputy Attorney General, is admitting that it didn't change the results at all. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the account of the 2016 election. That's what he said. We're not saying that, he said. There's no allegation that it did. So it's important, isn't it, to remember what that troll farm, what the Internet Research Agency was responsible for. This was one of the memes that the Internet Research Agency was putting out there. Buff Bernie in their LGBTQ colours. That is an actual meme that the Russians apparently used to sow discord. This is in Mueller's sort of indictment against the Internet Research Agency. That is what millions of people are saying the hack of the 2016 election equated to be. Here's another one. Like for Trump, ignore for Hillary. This was a meme posted by the Russian-backed account Army of Jesus. That's going to make you vote for Trump, isn't it, if you were swinging towards Hillary? Here's another one. Struggling with an addiction to masturbation? Reach out to me and we will beat it together. I'm not kidding you. These are actual memes that were used by the Internet Research Agency bots, apparently. You can't hold hands with God when you are masturbating, it says. Use our hotline if you need help. These are some of the Facebook ads that were used. Now, the Facebook campaign, the ad campaign, was the estimate keeps going up. I will say that, but it started out with something like $9,000, and now they're saying that there's less than $100,000 in memes and Facebook ads and Google ads that was spent by this Internet Research Agency. And it's important to remember that many of those ads, in fact, over half of those ads, appeared in after the election. So there's no way it could have swayed the election. They don't tell you that, do they, at that point? Over half of the ads from this Internet Research Agency was after the 2016 election they appeared. And of the half that did appear, half of those were in deep red states that were always going to go for Trump anyway. So then only 25% really of those advertisements actually hit the eyes of anybody who it might affect. And by their own admission, it didn't change the outcome at all. And it was a big fat dud in my opinion. And now they're saying this Internet Research Agency has resurrected its bots to attack the midterms in a much smaller operation, and this is what we need to be worried about. Look, the FBI warned us about this a month ago. Well, isn't that weird, isn't it? The FBI warned them, and then these researchers, whoever they are, what was it, Recorded Future and Graphica and Mandiant, they all do some research that find, yeah, it's true, but so far I've got no numbers as to how many accounts or how many posts there were made. Anyway, these are much smaller campaigns than those in 2016. I've already said that. I'll repeat it though. These are much smaller campaigns than those in 2016 election where inauthentic accounts reached millions of voters. They didn't reach millions of voters. What they go on is impressions. An impression isn't a reach. And somebody scrolling past, that's an impression. If you just scroll past and you see the ad, that's an impression. Even if you just look at it and scroll on. So that's a bit of a hyperbole there in that, if you ask me. Quote, the audiences are much smaller than on your other traditional social networks, said Brian Liston. Aha! Okay, Brian Liston. Who's he? He's a senior intelligence analyst with Recorded Future who identified the Nora Burka account. But you can engage in the audiences in much more he says, but you can engage the audiences in much more targeted influence ops because those who are on these platforms are generally US conservatives who are maybe more accepting of conspiratorial claims. So they're saying that they're not trying to change the election here. Well, they can't be because they're giving pro-conservative stuff to pro-conservatives. This sounds like an ad campaign again, doesn't it? The more you think of this, it sounds more like an ad campaign. I've had experience in ad campaigns. I was an internet marketer before I did this. I've explained this before. It certainly seems more like an ad campaign, trying to get people to click, go on their website, get emails, that sort of thing, than it does to change the results of the election. In fact, there's no way that can be. They're giving conservative stuff to conservatives. What they're going to do, vote conservative again? Anyway. He said, but you can engage the audiences in much more targeted influence ops because those who are on the platforms are generally US conservatives who are maybe more accepting of conspiratorial claims. So maybe he's saying there the conspiratorial claims sort of like Biden hacked the election if it doesn't go their way. Well, where would they get that idea from? Where would they get that idea from? It's okay when the Democrats do it. Who is this guy then? This Brian Liston. According to Twitter, it is. He's a senior threat analyst at Recorded Future, a disinfo and influence operations expert, OSINT, hashtag NAFO. So he's a NAFO guy. He's a NAFO fella. For those of you who don't know, NAFO, well, there are a bunch of people that are pro-NATO and pro-Ukraine, and they go around attacking people who are anti-war, like Brianna Joy Gray. Some background on the NAFO accounts targeting her right now. This is some of the stuff that they're posting about women of colour in America who are anti-war and saying we needed détente in Ukraine. So these are the NAFO people. With NAFO, Ukraine turns the trolls on Russia. This is an article by Adam Taylor. So they're part of this network. I wouldn't be surprised if he's operating these bots that I talked about that the Australian researchers found. But anyway, pro-Ukrainian NAFO troll chief has been outed as a Nazi. The account behind the pro-Western meme also denied the Holocaust. So there's the meme. The Polish Twitter user behind the NAFO phenomenon locked his account on Saturday after critics discovered his lengthy record of posts praising Nazi Germany, including Jews, insulting Jews and denying the Holocaust. So this is the guy that set up this NAFO bunch of people. Nice! And then this is what they say to Brianna Joy Gray when she calls for détente in Ukraine. So yeah, that's who NAFO are. That's who this guy is part of, this Brian Liston, and that's who the New York Times are taking their information from for this article. By the way, this article so far has had no numbers whatsoever of how many accounts they tracked, how many tweets they made, how many posts they made on Gab, what the interaction was. It's so far, and we are halfway through it. The other article that I covered the other day had a massive amount of information in the first four, look at that, first four paragraphs. You've got 80% of tweets in the 2022 election were part of this campaign. 90% of those tweets came from accounts that were pro-Ukraine. They studied 5.2 million tweets, they studied the hashtags, and they found that it came from 1.8 million unique Twitter accounts. How many people did this guy, this Brian Liston, how many accounts has he checked? It hasn't said yet. This article hasn't. that's got you worried, got the nation worried. Oh, scary Russian bots online, careful. Many of the accounts the researchers identified were previously used by a news outlet calling itself Newsroom for American and European-based citizens. Meta, the owner of Facebook and Instagram, has previously linked the news outlet to the Russian information campaign centered around the Internet Research Agency. Again, I need to point out something here. They keep saying the Russian and the Russians and the Russian information campaigns. They haven't proved any of these are at the direction of Putin or the Russian government. Their own investigation found that. Their own investigation could not prove it. So be very wary of their saying the Russians and the Russian. Doesn't mean the Russian government. It could just mean a Russian internet research agency that's doing internet marketing campaigns. The network appears to have since disbanded, and many of the social media accounts associated it went dormant after being publicly identified around the 2020 election. The accounts started becoming active again in August and September. Call to action like sleeper cells. I tell you what, as an internet marketer, I used to do this all the time. My accounts would be resurrected for certain times of the year, all the time. If you talk to an internet marketer, this is what happens. You'll have accounts go dormant, or they'll be posting in other things, or you have made your money for 3 months and you don't have to do it anymore. There's all sorts of reasons why these accounts could be flickering on and off, these bots. And again, they haven't been linked to the Russian state at all. I'm not saying that they're not, by the way. Norma Burka's account on Gab has many of the characteristics of an inauthentic user, Mr. Liston said. There is no profile picture or identifying biographical details. So who's going to pay any attention to it then? That would be my first question is, if it's an egg on Twitter, do you pay any attention if it's an egg? And no, of course you don't. No one responded to a message sent to the account through Gab. Well, that doesn't prove anything. You could send me an account. You could send me a message on Twitter, and I probably wouldn't respond to you. You're the New York Times. The account, which has more than 8,000 followers, wow, that's more than I have on Twitter, posts exclusively on political issues, not in just one state, but across the country, and often spreads false or misleading posts. What are they? What are these false or misleading posts? Can we see an example? Most have little engagement, but a recent post about the FBI received 43 responses and 11 replies. Oh! It was reposted 64 times! Oh my God, it's going to swing the election. Oh, Trump's going to win. That's it. That's what this entire article is based around. One Gab account that received 43 responses and 11 replies and was reposted 64 times on Gab. That's the only stat so far in this entire article. Since September, the account has repeatedly shared links to a previously unknown website, electiontruth.net. I did try and go through to that, and I couldn't get through to the website. That recorded future said was almost certainly linked to a Russian campaign. Again, a Russian campaign. They're trying to conflate with a campaign in Russia that might be from an internet marketer with a Russian campaign directed by Vladimir Putin. Do you see the way the wording? It's going to. What did that article the other day say? It's trying to promote a feeling of angst in the population. This is. It's what that bot campaign I reported on the other day was trying to do. Here's the New York Times doing it in the open, seemingly. ElectionTruth.net's earliest post date from only September the 5th. Since then, it has posted articles almost daily ridiculing President Biden and prominent Democratic candidates, while criticising policies regarding race, crime and gender that he said were destroying the United States. America under communism was one typical headline. Well, that sounds like the sort of thing some of my mates in America would post. All my mates over here. The articles all have pseudonyms as bylines, like Andrew J. Truth Forever and Laura Dot, according to Mr. Liston. The website domain was registered using Bitcoin accounts. So who's going to pay any attention to it then? Nobody. Nobody's paying attention. This account that they've obviously showing, because they would say, look, they would give you an example of the worst account, wouldn't they? The account that's got the most interaction. And by their own admission here in this article, it's getting no interaction whatsoever. This article, I'm afraid, is a big fat dud. That seems to me that the only reason for this article in the New York Times is to get the American public scared about Russian bots. Now remember, this account that they're reporting on, and they haven't said how many accounts they've looked at here, or how many tweets or posts that they've looked at in total. But this one account said a recent post about the FBI received 43 responses and 11 replies and was reposted 64 times. Now I'm assuming that they're trying to take the largest here, the one with the post with the largest reach. They're reporting on this. I don't think the New York Times have reported on this that I reported on the other day. This post discovered that 80% of tweets about the 2022 Russia-Ukraine invasion in its early weeks were part of a covert propaganda campaign originating from bots, automated bots. 90.2% of the tweets came from accounts that were pro-Ukraine. Only 7% of them were classed as pro-Russian, and they analysed a massively unprecedented 5.2 million tweets sent with key hashtags. So they looked at the hashtags as well, and it was from a period of from 24th of February this year, and it was 1.8 million accounts that were looked at. And the New York Times haven't reported on this, but they're reporting on this where this guy who said some stuff that was about the FBI, it got 43 responses and 11 replies and was reposted 64 times. The New York Times here pretty much are doing the equivalent of reporting on a fart when there's a literal hurricane right above their heads. There's a literal hurricane going on here, according to this research that I covered the other day, and they're reporting on this fart of a story. A fart in a hurricane. That's what I should have titled this video. For its contact information, election.truth.net lists a cafe inside a converted gas station in Cotter, Arkansas, a town of 900 people on a bend in the White River. The cafe is closed, however, and has been replaced by Cotter Bridge Market, a produce shop and deli whose owners said they knew nothing about the website. No one at Election Truth responded to a request for comments submitted through the site. So there's an entire article on where this website that Nora Guy geezer bot links to was registered. It was on a bend in the White River. The cafe was closed now. It was replaced by Cotterbridge Market, which is a produce shop. What did they sell? What kind of produce, New York Times? You didn't tell us that. They'll report on all that, but they won't report on how many accounts they looked at on Gab and Parler and how many posts and what the interaction was. They don't do that. They just get a NAFO troll to go, look, scary, oh, Russian bots, oh, be scared. We knew this was coming, the FBI told us. They've admitted it in this article, basically. No one at Election Truth responded to a request for comments submitted through the site. Of course not. You know, I used to have websites, you know, hosted in all sorts of places, and I knew internet marketers who were far more, well, they were unscrupulous and they didn't care what bullshit they printed. They really didn't care as long as they got money. As well, I was a crap internet marketer. I tried to do everything above board and be truthful about everything. This sounds like an internet marketing campaign by a company called the Internet Research Agency. I go past a place that's right by Euston Station when I travel to London. It's literally right by Euston Station. And as you go past it on the bus, you can see placard after placard of YouTube plaques. You know, 100,000 subscriber, those sort of thing. Placard after placard of them. And I'm pretty sure that they're these YouTube videos that just spit out nonsense videos. Look at this hack. Look how great they are, and all the hacks are crap. But it's an agency that employs people to do that. This sounds like something similar in Russia, to me, anyway. And like I say, none of this, they haven't pointed anywhere or said it's proven that the Russian government are behind any of this. Mr. Liston said that links to electiontruth.net appeared to be closely coordinated with the accounts on Gab linked to the Russians. Again, linked to the Russians. They're making it sound like it's the Russian government, aren't they? That it's Putin. Ugh. It's the Russians, the bad Russians. They're terrible. Ugh. You can see this is what the article is designed to do. Correct? In another campaign, Graphica, which I know is a cutout for intelligence, identified a recent series of cartoons that appeared on Gab, Getter, Parler, and the discussion for forumpatriots.win. The cartoons by an artist named Schmitz disparaged Democrats in the tightest Senate and governor races. Well, this is what you do if you're doing an internet marketing campaign. You post memes and whatever to get interaction, to try and get people to sign on to your mailing list or to sign up for your forum or your website or your Facebook group. So then you can try and harvest their email from them then, and then bombard them with all sorts of crap and spam. Or sell that email list off to other people who will then bombard you with crap or spam or try and con you out of something. You know, this is what internet marketers do, especially the unscrupulous ones who are on social media. One targeting Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia, who is black, employed racist motives. Another falsely claimed that Representative Tim Ryan, the Democratic Senate candidate in Ohio, would release all fentanyl distributors and drug traffickers from prison. Tim Ryan, yeah, he's the guy that Tulsi Gabbard absolutely destroyed, wasn't it? And the Democratic race of 2020. He looks like that guy from the Muppets. Yep, that's him. That's him, Tim Ryan. Yeah, I'm surprised he's still got a real... Tulsi Gabbard, you know, murdered his career on stage. Anyway. The cartoons received little engagement and did not spread virally to other platforms, according to Graphica. So their own article and the people that they're talking about here are admitting, yeah, all these posts, this one about Tim Ryan and this one about Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia, they had no interaction and didn't affect anybody. Do you see what I mean? They're reporting on a fart in a hurricane here. A recurring theme of the new Russian efforts is an argument that the United States under President Biden is wasting money by supporting Ukraine in its resistance to the Russian invasion that began in February. Well, a recurring theme of the new Russian efforts is an argument that the United States, well, you don't have to be, that's not a pro-Russian angle. Because people yesterday were saying to Biden to his face, I saw, why are you propping up this war in Ukraine? Why are you pushing us towards nuclear war? That's not a pro-Russian angle, that's just a people angle. people all around the world. Nobody wants, I don't know whether you realise this, New York Times, but not many people in the world want a nuclear war. They kind of think it's bad, you know, because there's no winners. There's just a lot of losers, like everybody. A recurring theme of the new Russian efforts. Look at the way it's worded, man. It's such propaganda. Such propaganda. Isn't the New York Times meant to be like the paper of record of the United States? Nora Burka, for example, posted a doctored photograph in September that showed President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine as a bikini-wearing pole dancer being showered with dollar bills by Mr. Biden. Really? A doctored one. I've seen him dancing in high heels and rubber. You might have doctored Biden giving him money, but I've seen him dancing on that pole. No, I have. As working class Americans struggle to afford food, gas and find baby formula, Joe Biden wants to spend $13.77 billion more in aid to Ukraine, the account posted. Not incidentally, that post echoed a theme that has gained more traction among Republican lawmakers and voters who have questioned the delivery of weapons and other military assistance. $13.7 billion more. Is it true? This is a bit true, that is, isn't it? You don't have to be Russian to think like that. It's no secret that it's no secret that Republicans, that a large portion of Republicans, have questioned whether we should be supporting what has been referred to as foreign adventures or somebody else's conflict, says Graham Brookie, Senior Director of the Digital Forensics Lab at the Atlantic Council. I know all about DFR Labs and the Atlantic Council. The Atlantic Council is, well, I mean, Henry Kissinger, Tony Blair, all the worst neocons in the world are on the board of this Atlantic Council, and the DFR Labs is sort of a cutout that was used in conjunction with Bellingcat to come up with a load of bullshit about Duma and the alleged chemical attack in Duma, to say yes, it was Assad that did it and he dropped it from an helicopter. I've done lots of reporting about this in the past. If you need to see, go and find out the truth about Duma, I would direct you in the direction of Aaron Marte at the Grey Zone, and he's basically the best on it. He'll debunk it, pretty much anything to do with that DFR Lab, Bellingcat, Duma narrative. I've done lots of videos on it too. So the DFR Labs is who they're going to, which has also been tracking foreign influence operations. At the Atlantic Council, they don't say the Atlantic Council has got, you know, people like Tony Blair on the board, do they, and Henry Kissinger? They don't say that at all. Don't you think they should? Don't you think these newspapers should actually tell you, oh, by the way, this is a massive cutout of neocons, it's a subsidiary of that? Don't you think they should give that information? Sort of like every newspaper in this country, isn't it, saying that, oh, it was the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights was reporting on this. Really? The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights? That sounds like a massive operation. No, it's a geezer in Coventry. One man in Coventry. He's not even in Syria. The FBI and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency did not respond to requests for comment about the Russian efforts. Mr. Brookie called the revived accounts, quote, recidivist behaviour. Gab did not respond to a request for comment. I'm not surprised. This is a load of fluff, isn't it? It's a load of crap. There's nothing here. There's a massive title though, isn't there? Look at that. There's a hell of a title. Russia reactivates its trolls and bots ahead of Tuesday's midterms. There's a hell of a title there, a headline. Not much there though. As before, it may be hard to measure the exact impact of these accounts on voters come Tuesday. I'm going to go out on a limb and say none. That's the impact it's going to have. Absolute zero. None. Nada. Nothing. They might collect some emails. This campaign that's been waged might connect some emails. I want to remind you of something. This other article that I referred to the other day, of these 5 million tweets that were analysed and these 1.8 million accounts surrounding the Ukraine war. Look at all the blue there is the pro I stand with Ukraine stuff, the hashtag. Now that's all the blue, and you look at those minimal ones, those little ones a week after the war in Ukraine started. Those are the ones that are the pro-Russian side. So you can see here, when I say a farce and a hurricane, that's kind of like the visual description of it. I'll continue with this article, though. This is just the last bit I'm on now. But I've been fair to it, haven't I? I've read the whole thing, like I read the whole thing the other day. As before, it may be hard to measure the exact impact of these accounts on voters come Tuesday. At a minimum, they contribute to what Edward P. Perez, a board member of the OSET Institute, a non-partisan election security organisation, I bet if I look that up, it's going to be full of ex-army officials, etc. You just know I am. Ex-NSA dudes. A board member called it manufactured chaos in the country's body politic. Manufactured chaos, he called it. They haven't said how many accounts it is. The one account they have mentioned had 64 retweets and 11 comments. While Russians in the past sought to build large followings for their inauthentic accounts on the major platforms, today's campaigns could be smaller and yet still achieve a desired effect. Well, the last one was huge and didn't affect a goddamn thing, according to your own investigation that went on for years. And now you're saying this is smaller and it will have the desired effects, the same desired effect. What, the same desired effect of nothing happening? In part because the divisions in American society are already such fertile soil for disinformation, he said. Since 2016, it appears that foreign states can afford to take some of the foot off the gas, Mr. Perez, who previously worked at Twitter, said, because they have already created such a sufficient division that there are many domestic actors to carry the water of disinformation for them. That last paragraph, I think you could rearrange those words and just say, well, yeah, people are finding out the truth about America and it's horrific. This is what Americans see on a daily basis. By the way, just to show you how big that Internet Research Agency campaign was before, I want to show you this. So this is from this is on medium.com. This is from DFR Lab. These are the people who tracked the stuff around the 2016 election, right? And you can see here they looked at over 9 million tweets. This is the previous time that the DFR Labs accounts came up. They tracked 9 million tweets attributed to 3,800 accounts, which sounds a lot, but look at that. That was over a period of 5 years. And half of those ads, remember, were after the 2016 election. So even that massive operation that they say was a massive operation, again, is a farce in a hurricane compared to this one, which is the pro-Ukrainian bots being implemented on the American public. Do you see what I mean? And as I reported the other day, every country is going to have their army of bots doing this on their own population. We've got our own over here called the 77th Brigade. I no doubt they're, trying to go out there on social media and whip up support for the Ukraine war, because that's the government's line on it over here. In Ukraine, the bots, as I reported the other day, were all about, we need to get money from abroad and look how well our military are doing. And in Russia, it's all the historical impact and the history with regards to NATO encroaching on the borders and the shelling of the Donbass. Whereas in America, it's pro-Ukraine and the Russians are coming to get us, and it's getting people fearful of this Russian invasion. and that nothing that they're hearing about their country that's bad is real. It's brainwashing of a nation. And it happens not just in articles like this, where there's literally nothing there. I've given it as fair as possible reading as I possibly can. And it's nothing compared to this massive one that's going on right now in America. They're not just doing it in print, but imagine it now on local news stations, them talking about this. And no doubt they will be. No doubt there will be news articles about this. No doubt the young Katzenbergs will be talking about this if they haven't already. This is what that equates to on the ground in America. It's brainwashing.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about troubling trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
All of those networks there that you saw come up, and they're all different networks saying the same thing, repeating the same script, are owned by one company, the Sinclair Network. One company. This is why it's such a bad idea to have just 2, 3, 4 entities, 4 people, 4 companies owning such a massive proportion of your media. You can brainwash a nation into thinking the Russians are going to get you, and you're going to be afraid, and it's an attack on democracy. And wasn't he saying yesterday that the midterms election, democracy is on the ballot? You know, this is the same country that can't count when it comes to election time. They can count 63 million votes in a commercial break during American Idol, and it takes them a week to count the ballots during an election. No other country in the world struggles, and then they go and sanction other countries for supposedly being not democratic enough. Well, that's the article anyway, everybody. I gave it as good a reading as I possibly could. All there is a headline with a couple of quotes from people who are in defence cutouts, ex-army officials, saying, yeah, be scared of these Russian bots, they're coming back to get us, and if you hear anything that's bad about America or the election or anything like that, it's all Russian disinformation, and be really scared about it. It's pretty much the same as the Sinclair Network there. That video was from a few years ago now. It's a couple of years ago, but it's basically it's the print version of that, and I've already checked, and that has been repeated over and over and over again. I think Newsweek have done a report on it, no doubt CNN will be doing a report on it if they haven't, MSNBC, the lot, and there's nothing there. It's a fart. Meanwhile, there's a hurricane that I reported on a couple of days ago that they're totally ignoring that's going on over their heads. I mean, this is a nation being propagandized by their own government and their own media entities here. Any foreign state can't get a look in. Let me know what you think anyway. Alright everybody, yeah, that's it. That's all I really I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about this non-article from the New York Times. What do you think about that? What do you think about the way that it's clear here, I think, the way minds are being manipulated by the American press, by the press in America. They're ignoring giant bot operations in their own country. The question is, why are they ignoring them? You know, if they're reporting on the Russian stuff, why are they ignoring a massive bot army that's working on social media for Biden, pro-Biden, pro-Ukraine? Why are they ignoring that, but talking about this? Is it because that is likely to be coming from the American side and they don't want to report anything that America are doing in the information war? That's what it seems like to me. Alright everybody, thank you so much for listening. Let me go and take some comments from the from TikTok. Hi TikTok, I'm sorry you couldn't see some of that stuff. I'm sorry if but yeah, if you go to the YouTube, you'll see all of them. Joey Sponson says, you seem to be winding yourself up, Gordon. I hope you're alright. No, I'm not. I'm not alright. I'm not alright. And neither should you be either. You're being lied to constantly. And you have been for years. By people who are relied upon to give you the truth. Meanwhile, they've locked the guy who's giving you the truth. They've locked him up in Belmarsh. He's there on no charges whatsoever in this country. No crime. 3.5 years he's been there. Solitary confinement, psychological torture. He's never told us anything false. Anything that can be proved false. Never propagandized us. These people have there. These people get Pulitzers. So no, I'm not alright, Joyce Bronson. I'm not. And neither should you be. You should be outraged by this. We've been lied to for years. People have been brainwashed, both in America and in this country, into believing narratives that are not true. They are not true. Every single one of us, as a result of this, will believe in stuff that isn't true. Now, if you think about that, if you think, okay, that's happening right now, in the era of the digital era, the communications era, the electronics era that we're in, there's much more space right now, isn't there, in the world for opposing narratives to be heard. Do you know, you hear one side of things and you think, oh, that's terrible. Then you hear the other side and it's like, oh, that makes the other side look like a pile of crap. If you just show one side of the story. And you have to think, okay, well, if that's happening and we found, I mean, imagine all the stuff, imagine how many stories that we know that there have been lies told about in the last 6 years. There's just a monumental amount that I've covered, you know, going back to 2016. And that's in the era of the internet, when we can share information and share ideas. We didn't have that before. So you can imagine, this hasn't just been happening just now. This has been happening for years. I want to show you a video of a CIA, I think it's CIA, and this is talking from 1983. This is before the internet. Okay? 1983 this is. So this is before the age of the internet. Now, this is what the intelligence services in America, the CIA, etc., would, or the FBI, etc., you could call them the NSA now, or whatever agency. This is what they were doing in 1983. Imagine what they're doing now in the world of the internet. Bearing in mind that James Clapper is hired by MSNBC as a, quote, analyst. Just listen to this.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there? Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. And I would say our percentage planning that kind of data was 70 to 80%. The correspondents we targeted were those who had terrific influence, the most respected journalists in Saigon, like Robert Chaplin of the New Yorker magazine, Kai's Beach of the Los Angeles Times from time to time, and also he worked for the Chicago Daily News. Bud Merrick of U.S. News and World Report, Malcolm Brown of the New York Times, even Maynard Parker of Newsweek magazine. We would go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate. If I planted a piece of information with a reporter, I would ordinarily then try to create an environment in which he could not check the information. I would go to the British ambassador and brief him on the disinformation I had just given the reporter. So when the reporter wanted to cross-check what I'd told him with, say, the British ambassador, New Zealand ambassador, or what have you, he would get false confirmation, the same message coming back at him, and he'd say, aha, I've got proof that Frank Snepp told me the truth, when in fact what he'd gotten was simply an echo of what I'd given him in the first place via the British ambassador or other of our friendly diplomatic contacts. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. You briefed.
So there you go. Sorry if you couldn't hear that on TikTok, by the way, but that's an ex-CIA agent telling a reporter how they plant stories and how they'll give true stories to journalists and then slip in pieces of information, one piece of data, as he called it then. Well, I mean, what was it that article said? That the FBI The FBI gave them a heads up. The FBI and the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency. Okay. They said a month previous, didn't they, in this article? They said last month, here we go, last month the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Cyber Security issued an alert warning of the threat of disinformation spread by, quote, dark web media channels, online journals, messaging applications, spoofed website, emails, text messages and fake online personas. You can see how it would be easy to, you know, to create a way of spreading your disinformation on the airwaves, especially if you've got cutouts from intelligence and ex-army officials in these cybersecurity companies, which have only been around for a short time, that were set up by ex-spooks that the New York Times and Washington Post all en masse quote as sources. You could create whatever truth you wanted, couldn't you? It's in, well, the reason why I was talking about how you look at the last 6 years and just all the stories that we know that they've lied about in the last 6 years. This has obviously been going on for a long time, and before the internet came along, we didn't have, you know, you had to go down to the library and look at newspaper and research newspaper articles. You know, very few people had time for that. Now everybody's a researcher online. So it's much harder for them now, or it should be, to spread this information. But then, oh wait, it's easy to spread that disinformation on the airwaves if you've got control over who gets banned and who doesn't. Remember when I reported that pro-Russian army attack around about the time that the war broke out in Ukraine, 100,000 accounts were banned. Whereas many of these ones spreading the pro-Ukraine, pro-Biden, anti-Russia stuff, they're still around. Who do you think's operating those bots? Who do you think is operating those bots? These bots that I reported on the other day, who do you think is operating on them now? Bearing in mind that the New York Times are reporting on this fart of a story here, and they're not reporting on this hurricane of a story here. Who do you think is in control of these bots? Intelligence, right? You're being lied to on a scale that you cannot possibly imagine if you're in America, and in the UK it's the same. This is information warfare being waged by the West, not on Russians. They're not waging this war of information on Russians at all. No. They're waging it on you and on you and your families and your neighbours and your friends. That's who they're lying to. They're not lying to Russians. Russians are trying to get their bots to spread the truth. RT wasn't banned from our airwaves because of anything they said that wasn't true. These operations were banned because they provide balance to the story, so you then get a nuanced view of the world and can make some educated decisions. Whereas if you only get one side of the story that keeps you afraid and scared and keeps you voting blue no matter who, or because otherwise you'll get the scary Russians and the Trump come back in, it's very easy to divide a population and propagandize them into believing into scary monsters that just aren't there. The same goes for this country as well, but I just see it in America wherever I look. Alright. That's me done for the day, everybody. Is there anything you want to talk about while I'm here? I've covered that story. Is there anything you want to talk about? Any questions? You look so sad, so stagnant. I kind of am. It's sad talking about this. I try and make fun of it. But it's tough. Have you read Nick Davies' Flat Earth News? I think you'd like it, says Dylan Edwards. Are you trying to say I'm a conspiracy theorist, mate? I'm quoting you stuff from Declassified and New York Times. You know, I'm showing you that they're the people who are lying to you, not me. Is Trump bad too, says Louise. There were no good guys, Louise. There were no good guys. Trump is not good, Biden's not good, the Democrats are not good, the Republicans are not good. There are no good guys in this. There are two wings of the same bird. No matter which one you pick, you're still going to get the government and the deep state. Nothing's going to change. Nothing. They might, you know, if the Republicans take over, they might impeach Biden, but then all the news will talk about is that impeachment and not this massive information warfare that's going on over Americans' heads, and they won't tell the truth about Ukraine, and they certainly won't give it nuance and explain the last 8 years. Trump's not a good guy. If you want any proof that Trump's not a good guy, who did he employ as Attorney General? Bill Barr, right? Bill Barr, whose dad gave Jeffrey Epstein his first job in a school. Virginia Giuffre was trafficked through Mar-a-Lago. He's not a good guy. They just can't control him. That's all. Hey, it's November. Have you celebrated? It's my cake day. Cake. Oh, Kenki Malenki, did you do Sober October? It's your birthday. Oh, happy birthday, Kenki. Yeah, I celebrated. I did Sober October last month. Trained every day, and I didn't train for a week. That was the hardest part of going without alcohol. Wasn't a problem, although I did have a nice drink the weekend. But training every day was tough. That was really tough. But yeah, I hope you have a nice birthday, Kenki. What do we do? Just say no to the agenda, says Louise. You have to non-violent civil disobedience. You have to talk to your friends and your family. I say this all the time. You know, people who vote Republicans are not your enemy. People who vote Democrat are not your enemy. You know, over here is the same as America. We've been divided to think that our friends and our family are our enemy, and they're just not. The people who are the enemy are the corrupt, I want to use the P word, but I can't because I'm on TikTok as well, but just corrupt monsters that are ruling over you like pharaohs rather than governing you like a government. Thank you, Kenkley. Thank you. I don't vote, both lie. I would say vote, just don't vote for the duopoly in either country. I heard about a sketch show with Dudley Moore from the 1960s, and it was an American guy who was talking to the British guy Dudley Moore, and he said, Dudley Moore asked the American, what's the difference between American politics and British politics? And he said, well, my dear, the American accent, not this one, but in an American accent he said, well, in America we have the Republican Party, which is the same as your Conservative Party back home, and then we have the Democratic Party, which is the same as the Conservative Party back home. And that was the 1960s. You know, what's changed since? I laugh my head off when I hear people on Fox calling Joe Biden a radical lefty. I think Joe Biden's to the right of the Republican Party now. I know for sure he's to the right of Margaret Thatcher. I think he's further right than the Republican Party now, because the Republican Party tend to be a little bit more anti-war than he is, and the Democrats. So yeah, the Republicans are further left than the Democrats at this point. I know it sounds strange, but it is. Yeah, but we have Trump now, and he stands for white supremacists. It's different. Trump stands for a lot of people who are disillusioned with politics and would just rather see it burn to the ground than the Democrats continue. And this is what I felt. There's an article by Matt Taibbi, and he was on the campaign trail in 2016, and he was talking to a lot of voters before 2016, and he kind of got a feeling that something might be a little bit different here in 2016, and that Trump might win, when all the media, you might remember, were saying, oh, Hillary's going to walk this. He was talking to people, and he said people I were meeting in rural areas were like, you know what, I think I'm going to vote for Trump just because I know we'll burn it to the ground. That's how dejected people in America were at the voting system and the system of democracy that they've got. He's not going to save you. The only people who are going to save you are yourselves. Alright, let's check. Alright, to everybody on YouTube, I'm sorry if the microphone is not working. I can see that for some reason there's a limiter on it, and I don't know what the problem is. I'm not a technical guy. If it's too much of a problem, then you can always go elsewhere and get your news from somewhere else. I'm sorry, I'm not technical. If you do know anybody who's willing to help me with it, great. Otherwise, yeah, stop complaining. Would you rather have the truth distorted with your mic, or the truth distorted by propagandists? I know which one I would rather have. Alright, I've got to go, because another problem I've had over the last few weeks is my internet, and somebody is coming to fix it today. Thank you very much for watching. Watch out for propaganda articles like this in the media, and watch out for every news organisation that is going to no doubt regurgitate this. I bet you there's quite a few. Let me just check before I go. So here we go, look at this. So this is a quick Google search, and I don't usually use Google, I use DuckDuckGo usually, but I just want to show you the search. Look. So the New York Times, Business Insider, Neiman Lab, Election Blog, there's the Twitter stories. Yahoo, Fox News. They're all reporting on that fart of a story. And none of them reporting on the hurricane that's going on around their very ears. Talk about not being able to see the woods for the trees, eh? Take care, everybody. Support independent media. I'm out. Speak to you soon. Alright, that's it, everybody. That is my live stream finished. Thanks very much for your support. Thanks very much for watching. And so go to my website, sign up to my mailing list if you want a notification of whenever I go live. And yeah, Ellie's come to say goodbye. Come on, Els. Alright, take care, everybody. Support independent media.